like has happened.
Blatant saber rattling by Pakistan. Salman Bashir openly warns India not to take on nuclear-armed Pakistan. Very good morning. You're watching NewsX with me, Aishwarya Kapoor. Now, the top story that we are tracking every moment. Senior Pakistani investigator probing graft charges against Raja Parvez Ashraf was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The relatives allege that the investigator may have been murdered.
A significant number of participants are from the younger generation. This reflects our priorities and resonates with the democratic reality of our country.
Congress looks for its way forward to 2014 at its Chintan Shivir in Jaipur, with Rahul Gandhi leading the Youth Brigade from the front. Party chief Sonia Gandhi wants the Congress to introspect on how inroads have been made into its traditional strongholds.
Absolutely, CBI inquiry is a logical corollary step and which needs to be taken.
It is the NewsX impact. BJP demands CBI inquiry into the loan waiver scam. Javadekar says Parliament's Accounts Committee will look into the irregularities. SFIO under Central Government Ministry of Corporate Affairs sends a notice to self-styled Godman Asaram Bapu. The investigative office looking into the matter to find more facts to prosecute Asaram. After thrashing England in the third ODI, India to take on Cook's English side in Dhoni's backyard. Captain Cool and his men look to take the series lead in the Ranchi ODI. In an exclusive interview to Pakistan High Commissioner to NewsX, Salman Bashir has described the beheading of the Indian soldier on line of control as India's domestic issue. Well, Bashir said that India should not trifle with the nuclear power and India should not construe Pakistan's restraint as weakness. Bashir also criticized Prime Minister Manmohan Singh's no business as usual with Pakistan comment, saying it is very unlike the Prime Minister to say so. Bashir also blasted Indian Army Chief General Bikram Singh's retaliation comment as hawkish and irresponsible, asking the government of India to clarify whether it subscribes to his views on retaliation and the demand for 10 Pakistani heads from some quarters.
One can stir emotions. It's easy to play with raw emotions. Whether it is the beheading, whether it is something else, the city was paralyzed almost for many days. We've had a lot of activity in an election year in Pakistan. But it would be highly irresponsible to then move from those parameters which are purely domestic into areas which affect peace and stability between two nuclear weapon states. I think it will be highly irresponsible for two states of the stature of Pakistan and India, which are de facto acknowledged as nuclear weapon states, to deal with issues of peace and security in a manner that is like has happened. Our restraint in terms of statements, in terms of rhetoric, should not be misconstrued. We could have hyped up the incident of the 6th of January and the subsequent casualties on our side, which are more than the two that India is speaking about, including sniping fire by Indian forces, targeted shooting of Pakistani Jawans. It's very unlike Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. We continue, we have always held him in very high esteem. We are convinced that he is a man of peace, he is a rational person, and I believe our leadership has also reciprocated and agreed to work with the Indian leadership. One could have expected better from the army chief. His 2.5 hours, I didn't follow the entire statement, but I think the point that he made significantly was to up the national and international pressure on Pakistan. There were also references on Siachen, on the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. I really do not know why he would at least sound so hawkish against Pakistan.
All right, let's get a perspective on that story. We are joined in by Wing Commander retired Professor Praful Bakshi, who is a defense analyst. We are also joined in by Dr. Ashok Pankaj, who is a political analyst, and of course we Thapar, our defense editor. To you, Vishal, of course, you were there. You had that exclusive interview that Newsix had. What is the sense that you got from that interview? What was the sense? What would you take home with that, of course, interview?
Well, there is no change in the Pakistani position at all. And there was good old-fashioned denial mixed up with a little bit of saber rattling, I would say, of nuclear saber rattling. From a Pakistani point of view, it would be showing India the mirror. Now, what was quite remarkable about his comments was that he described the beheading of the Indian soldier Lance Naik Hemraj by what India says was a cross-border raid, a cross-LOC raid by the Pakistan Army on the 8th of January. Now, Salman Bashir describes this as a domestic issue of India very clearly twice, and he says that it is dangerous to sort of pitch a domestic issue and get it mixed up, in this very combustible mix of India-Pakistan relations. And he says that this is not the way to do business with, a nuclear-armed neighbor. He made a mention to Pakistan being a nuclear weapons power twice. So this is how it is. He describes this as a domestic issue, and he says that if India has concerns and issues, it should raise it at an appropriate forum. Pakistan has made the offer officially now of talks between the two foreign ministers, and he says all these issues should be raised there. He also went back, in fact denied his earlier reported comment that Pakistan is agreeable to holding an inquiry into the beheading of the Indian soldier. There was complete denial, and of course it was all said with a lot of cordiality, but he was very firm in his position. There was absolutely no change in the Pakistani position that this is an issue which is internal and domestic to India. And
absolutely. As you just mentioned, that he did mention about the domestic issue. He did mention it twice. So I'd like to ask Mr. Bakshi, now that he is actually talking about a matter which is of domestic issue. What do you make out of that domestic issue statement from him?
You see, he is trying to play with words, and he is trying to ward you off, guide you off the main argument. He knows very well what the truth is. The main point is that he is from the government side, he is a diplomat, and they all know that Pakistan Army is putting a lot of pressure on them. So whatever he has to say in such a word which the army commander across the border want to hear. So this is what his style is and the government style is. At the moment, you must understand, we have Indian government has an army, but in case they say Pakistan Army has a government. So that's why the government is playing with words. Domestic issue is just to put you off track on the right argument, and they don't talk about it. As Vishal has just brought out, he is trying to talk in terms of other threats, veiled threats, talking in terms of nuclear and getting you off, mentioning in a slight polished derogatory terms about the Prime Minister, our Prime Minister. I mean, these are all signs of a person who is desperately trying to show he is sophisticated and solved, and yet hiding for cover. And that's his style, because and you don't blame him too much for it, because he's paid to do this.
But the question is it his style or is it the Pakistan style?
It is a Pakistan government's policy, and they have got a right person to do it. So he's doing it quite well and effectively, as you can make out.
Right. So, Dr. Ashok Pandey, would you agree with that? That it is Pakistan's policy, it is not what is this person's style is, that is rather Pakistan's policy.
You see, any interview or a statement by an ambassador is of course a kind of official statement. It's not like that he is making a personal statement. When the issue has reached a position where it's very tense relation with the two countries. In that situation, if the Minister of Pakistan is making a statement, he must have prepared his brief, he must have got brief from the government in Pakistan, from the Army Chief of Pakistan, and then he addressed and gave the interview. So it's not like that his style in that way he is blowing hot and cold. The problem is that probably Pakistan is also not in a very position to control some of such elements which are happening inside the country, even including the border. That's a serious problem not only for Pakistan but also for India, because you see, if there is a democratic government in Pakistan who has full control over the situation, in that case we can enter into negotiations or dialogue. But if there is a government who itself is in big trouble, the Supreme Court of Pakistan has put a judgment which in fact put the Prime Minister into trouble, then Army is in almost effective control of the government. In such situations, even establishing dialogue is not very easy, because then dialogue doesn't serve the purpose, because if you say something and on the other hand you do not have the authority to translate your words into action, in that situations the relations keep deteriorating, and that remains the serious problem with the present Indo-Pak relations, that what Pakistani government or officials are saying are actually not being implemented, or actions are not being followed on the ground, and that remains the biggest problem.
But say, of course, the bigger question, you just mentioned about that the government is in trouble, the Pakistani government inside is in trouble. But at that moment, when of course there's a turmoil within the Pakistani democracy, if the Pakistan High Commissioner to India makes such statement, what would we make out of it?
You see,
Sakshi, what do you say on
I'll
that?
tell you that, but we have to first understand what the situation in Pakistan is. It is not a normal situation. It is not what it was 20 years back. Now the question is, they have got one government and one other parallel of force which is actually dictating the government. And then they have a big, large population of Pakistan which is at the moment very, very happy with the rapprochement with India. So it's a government which is happy at the moment with the rapprochement with India. They actually want it. So does the public. But the army does not want it. And there is a Taliban element which is in the lower echelons of the army, which is controlling an army, and that element are playing the game against the government. And if there is a rapprochement and if everything is peaceful on a border, let me tell you one thing, army loses its relevance. And they know it very well. But that is where they don't want this to happen. So this sort of atmosphere will be there. And of course, Qadri equation has also come, where army has just neutralized him by saying, "Ye Prime Minister material hai." What it means is, everybody now thinks Qadri is army man. So army has got its position very secure. Army does not want to ride the horse anymore. They want to remain behind, make other person ride and rule. That is the most comfortable position they are. So what India must do is to make our army more independent, in the sense, give them more power on the border, observe them, but don't interfere too much. And it should be handled between the div commander and brigade commander levels and battalion commander level. The things can be sorted out. But don't get into what Pakistan is saying, because they will create stories, domestic issue, this, that, just to confuse the issue. That's all.
Vishal, of course, you were there. You had taken that interview. Did you get a sense of the Salman Bashir there trying to create stories and as Wing Commander Bakshi is saying?
No, he was sticking to his national position, and there is no change in the Pakistani position, as is very apparent from his interview. Now, he also, when I asked him a question on his response to the Prime Minister's comments that there can be no business as usual with Pakistan when there's so much barbarity